Today, I'm very excited. We have somebody that I really admire, someone who played professional soccer for the U.S. national team, Premier League, MLS. Um, he became one of the top analysts, commentators in USA for Fox Sports, and he even co-owns a team in La Liga in Spain. Welcome, Stu
What's up, bro?
Holden.
How we doing?
Good, you?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, we're recording nice and early, which is in my wheelhouse. You know, young kids, they get me up early these days. I've become a morning person, so I'm like, I attack the day in the morning and try to get moving because I feel like as I get into the afternoon, then it's like all kids' activities and the day is just like gone. So I love it, man.
Right, no, and I appreciate it. I know that you've been traveling a lot and making time for us. It means a lot.
Yeah, no, happy to do it, man.
Yeah. Stu, before we dive into your career as an analyst, I think we can all agree that you are one of the most handsome men in TV.
You know, I over the years, who was it? I was around somebody the other day. I was like, I'm hitting 40 now, and somebody was like, "You're 40?" I'm like, "Yeah." You know, it's. I feel like life has just flown by. But you know, like you, we both kind of retired from one career earlier than we would have liked, I think, and then you get into this second life, and I almost feel reborn in a way. And some days I feel a lot older than I maybe am, but yeah, I guess it's good that I don't have a face for radio.
No, you definitely one of the prettiest I've seen. But I would like to take a step back and from playing in the Premier League, representing U.S. national team at international stages. I know that you had a lot of injuries. We will talk about that too. So you definitely lived quite a journey. But talk me a little bit about like the player behind the analyst. How did it all begin for you? How did you make your way to the Premier League as a U.S. citizen, right?
Yeah.
When Europe didn't have the eye on the American players. At least as it is now.
Yeah, I actually get asked this question a fair amount about what point did I realize, and I'm interested for you as well, of when you kind of felt there was something there that you could become a professional soccer player. And I moved to the United States when I was 10. It's all I played. Well, I played soccer, rugby, golf, tennis. Like I played a lot of different sports, and I'm big on this now with my kids because I think multi-sport really helps shape and balance and also keep you motivated around the sports that you end up really loving. But I did realize at a pretty young age I had something. And so when I moved to the U.S., soccer started to really kind of take off. But it wasn't probably till I was 14, 15, and it started to get a little bit more serious. And then I was starting to get identified by state ODP camps and regional camps. And I never made the national team until I was 19 years old. And that's when I went to Clemson. So, like, at that point, I was realizing that I had a chance to be professional, and I was all in on soccer, football, and working every single day, working in the gym. But it was really a moment for me in college when I went to Clemson that I realized that I had talent, but I wasn't matching that with the work ethic and the things it required off the field to really take that next step. And I really do credit a lot of that journey of realizing in that moment, don't waste the talent that you have. And there's a real opportunity there for you. And I truly believe in the preparation meets opportunity thing. We all need a little bit of luck along the way and getting scouted by the right person, the right coach to believe in you, the right opportunities. But then it's up to you to kind of really grab that and take it and run with it. And so for me, I was at Clemson. I played a little bit my freshman year. I always said when I went to college, I wanted to go for a short amount of time and then I wanted to go pro. I want to be pro. I want to be pro. And I was kind of manifesting that. But then we played just a regular spring game against a U17 national team of the U.S. And I played this unbelievable game. Next week, I was called up to the U20s. Wow. I flew down to Florida, made the team, flew to Korea, played in a tournament with the U.S., scored a goal against Brazil. Then I went to Northern Ireland. I scored a goal against Denmark. And then like 2 months later, I was pro. And so it like happened for me like that. And then I just kind of took off. So it was this weird path and journey. And then, we can talk about it a little bit, but I was in England, had an opportunity with Sunderland. I was punched outside of a nightclub and fractured my eye socket. So then I came back to the U.S. with the Dynamo, and then that's kind of when like the next stage of my career started.
Wow. So from Clemson national team, then you went pro with
Sunderland.
Straight to Sunderland.
Yeah, 19 years old. Yeah, I was living in a hotel by myself.
Did they see you while you were playing with the national
in the
team?
Milk Cup? Yeah, and also I was training with Everton for like 2 months when David Moyes was the coach, and they were third place in the Premier League at the time, and he just kind of said to me, look, we really like what you have as a 19-year-old, but you're not going to play here. So here's the number for Mick McCarthy. I'm going to recommend you to him at Sunderland. And so I went up there, and they were in the championship at the time and ended up getting promoted that year to the Premier League.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was that experience for you? Coming from US to...
It was difficult, if I'm being honest. Yeah. Having been born in Scotland, I was familiar with the culture in the UK. So that part I loved. But I think I probably underestimated just how difficult it would be, going into a new and competitive environment, pro environment. I wasn't making a lot of money at the time. I think I was making maybe £2,000 a week or less, like barely enough. I was living in a hotel. I was getting myself to training on a taxi every single day. I really didn't have many friends at that time, so I'd come back to the hotel, and I was actually playing online poker a lot at that time, which was supporting my living, and ended up...
So you make money out of it?
Yeah, so online poker, actually, it's like an MLS underground known story. I was playing online poker when I got back to the Houston Dynamo, so I signed with Houston. My salary was $32,000 a year, and I was driving a BMW X5 and rolling in with I'd bought a house, and everybody's like, oh, his parents must have given him money. And then they later found out I actually was playing online poker at that time, and I was making enough money to be able to buy a house, buy myself a car.
No way.
And then it kind of spread that people found out that that's what I was doing, and I was really good at it. So yeah, I was playing online poker like as soon as I get home from practice. I was gambling and making money, and it was like really lucrative, and I made a good amount of money doing that. But then my soccer career started to really take off, and online gambling started to get a little bit more regulated. So then there was less bad players. It became harder to make money. And then I found myself at like 2 or 3 in the morning gambling. And then I found that I wasn't sleeping well, and it started to affect what I really wanted to do, which was play professional soccer.
Right.
And so I almost like quit on a dime. And still to this day, some of my friends are like, dude, you were making so much more money playing poker. Like, how could you give that up to go all in on soccer?
Mm-hmm.
But I always kind of felt that was something I could do again if I wanted to, and I still love going to Vegas to this day. But I don't play online anymore. I gamble in the casino. So
wow,
it's fun.
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, not many people do actually. So it's like I'm always happy to talk about it. Just never really comes up. And I remember the first time I made $40,000 on poker, and I went to my dad. And my dad didn't know I was playing at that time. And I said, hey, Dad, I've got some money. Like, I don't know what to do with it. And he said, well, how much money have you got? And I said, well, $40,000. He was like, what are you doing? Like, he thought maybe I was selling drugs or something, Yeah. So I told him I'm playing poker. I told him this is my system. I cash out when I get to this much. And I can only ever lose a certain amount of money. But now, like, I've got this money. And he goes, okay, we're going to open you a brokerage account. You need to invest some of it, and you can spend some. So then I came back to him another, 3 months later. I said, Dad, I've got $100,000. He was like, what? He's like, what are you doing? And so I had to show him and walk him through everything. And so I bought my first car, and then I put more in the stock market. And then the next time I showed him how much I had, and he's like, okay, you need to buy a house. So I bought my first house with poker money. So
wow.
Yeah. Crazy.
That's amazing. A friend of mine won the Bahamas tournament.
Yeah.
He won like 5.1 million.
Well, I didn't win that much, so I wouldn't have minded that.
Well, but but
it's crazy though, right?
Yeah.
Just playing a card game.
Right. Yeah. For real. So your experience in Premier League, players are known to drink a lot. Is that really true?
There's definitely
culturally, I feel like
there's a drinking culture in the UK. What I would say is that I think that's changed a decent amount now, but I will say, like, back when I was playing, we would go out. We would go out after games. We'd go out on a Sunday afternoon. We would, maybe if we had a Wednesday off, we'd be out on a Tuesday night just for something casual. I drank in parties, but I would say once I realized that, like, it was affecting performance on the field is when I curtailed. But I never shied away from like the Saturday night. Like that was my chance to go out and kind of unwind and blow off some steam.
But I feel like when you are young, you don't really have those effects. There's maybe like between 25, 26, then it's when like, okay, if I'm not treating my body right, then it's when I'm getting hit with it. But
I mean, even when I was in MLS, like we partied, man, in Houston. It was like and we were the best team in the league. We won back-to-back championships, 06, 07. I tell some of the stories to some of the younger MLS players now. I'll find myself at a dinner setting or something in media, and like we'll be out sharing different stories, and I'll tell stories to these younger players of what we used to do back in the day, and their jaws are on the floor. And there's a combination, I think, of a little bit of envy and jealousy of like today. The reality is it's a society now where there's a different expectation of a professional athlete, and there's just so many more eyes on you at all times, and social media is such a bigger thing. So while I see the benefits of social media from a branding perspective for an athlete, I'm not actually very jealous of that from what the experience I was able to have, that I definitely, at least when I was in MLS, I didn't feel like I was under the constant watchful eye of the public, and that any mistake I made. And so I was still able to be a kid and be a 19, 20-year-old, 21-year-old, because in many ways as a professional athlete, I think you almost forego and bypass a stage of life that a lot of normal, quote unquote, people get to have in college. And you need to go through those experiences as a young adult to then mature. As you're saying, when you get to a 25, 26-year-old person, that you've had that, and now you're like more motivated and focused on kind of that, achieving your career goals and whatever you want to do and building a family, and if that's for you, right? But like if you don't go through that, I think you're always constantly left wondering and wanting and seeing those experiences that other people have. So in many ways, I think about my experience and I'm like, man, we got to do some crazy shit that was a lot of fun, responsibly.
Any good story that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, I got so many. I'm trying to think. Like I'll have to go down memory lane here to think of like some of the, well, like in Houston, for example, we had a really good group of younger guys. I lived in the house with 4 other guys who are still some of my best friends to this day.
Love it.
It was basically a frat house. A fair amount of us like played in the team, but we weren't like always the key starters and the biggest players, because we had, Dwayne De Rosario, Brian Ching, like these really big guys. But then we had this young group of guys, and we called ourselves we had the Sunday Fun Day group. So we would play on a Saturday night. We'd go out Saturday night, but then Sunday we had these like theme days where we would start at a bar at like 10, 11 in the morning. We'd have brunch, and then we would just party all day until like nighttime. And whatever the theme was, somebody would pick it. So we would say like double popped collar, polo day. So we'd all wear the same thing, sunglasses, and we'd like head out and we'd bounce from bar to bar. One of the times, Bobby Boswell and we wanted to be Rockets power dancers. So like the hype crew. So we dressed in Houston Rockets, like basketball jerseys. And I had a mini basketball net around my neck, and he would have the basketballs, and we'd go around the bar, and like he would just go and find any female or whoever at that point and be like, hey, if you make a shot from my buddy Stu, who's standing 30 yards away, we're going to buy you and all your friends drinks. So like I'd be standing there with a hoop around my neck, and he'd, all these people now would be trying to shoot basketballs. And like it just we became the life of the party in any given bar that we were at. And then by the end of the night, we'd be at this bar called Escobar, and we'd have like a table and basically like 50 people that we'd met throughout the day. And it would just be like this giant party. And then everybody around Houston knew like every Sunday the Dynamo boys would be out partying somewhere. And like imagine today's MLS.
It wouldn't be possible.
You'd get absolutely annihilated by your coach. Now,
when I was in Barcelona, I came early to MLS. It was one of the early ones. Usually people would come here and retire, right? And I was 19, 20. And I remember just what we were talking about, the public eye attention. Barcelona, 24/7, whatever you do, whatever you go, people recognize you. You are under the microscope all the time. If you lose, it's like, be careful, you cannot go out. And I came here, it was like the total opposite, and we're talking about like 2012, right?
Yeah.
But it changed a lot from now, and with social media, it's definitely like all of a sudden you can be in one wrong video and your career is done.
Yeah. When you were at Sporting, though, it felt like that culture, that team had a real like accountability to it within the locker room.
Yeah.
Peter, I know the way he coached also similarly, I think, in some ways to Dom Kinnear, and where Dominic Kinnear had like an internal policing, and he empowered leaders to still check guys. And I had that, and our group had that in different moments, from Pat Onstadt, Wade Barrett, like the De Rosario, Ching, guys who still would like have fun, but would tell you when you cross the line.
Correct.
Because we knew still at the end of the day, the most important thing was the team and what happened on the field.
Correct. I think what he did really good was like put the team first.
Yeah.
Rather than having stars. And when we look at the 2013 when we won the MLS Cup, we didn't have like that DP that is known worldwide. Everybody knew what to do. Obviously, we had Graham Zusi, Aurelian Collin, all of these guys, but like not like big names like Henry and all of those. And one thing that I really liked when I arrived, he said, "Listen, Uri, you can do whatever you want as long as you perform me on the field."
Mm-hmm.
And then I would see Aurelian Collin, another European from France. They put me on the same room with this guy. He was never on the room. He was always out here and there. But when it was time to play, he was one of the best. And as you said, if you cross the line here and there would be all the veterans telling you, "Hey, don't be late at this, don't be late like that. We have a lot of freedom. We don't want to lose that. So you might as well do what you have to do. If they say you got to arrive this time, you got to be there."
Yeah. I think the biggest...
But that accountability, I really liked. And I feel like with the years going by, I've seen that the young players, they don't respect it as much as the veterans, and they don't take as much shit as we used to take.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I think within that, you learn boundaries, and the biggest lesson I would say that I learned in my career was balance, and trying to find the balance between performing on the field, relaxing off the field, getting away from it sometimes because you feel so much pressure on a consistent basis to perform, to train. When you're not playing well off the field mentally, you're all over the place. So I think for every player, it's trying to find what works for you. And I do think with you, the younger generation, I think now feels a little bit more entitled to where they feel like they've earned it at a younger age without having to go through certain steps of almost like a rite of passage, because there's this entitlement of like, well, I've made it, I'm playing, you have to respect me, as opposed to like earning your keep within a team, to find your voice, to be a certain personality. And I'm not saying that they're wrong in certain moments, but there still is, again, it's a rite of passage of you have to earn that respect from your teammates, not outside the locker room. Inside the locker room is the most important. And sometimes I think the culture within a team gets hurt because you have guys that don't respect it. And that comes to me from not strong leadership within the team. And sometimes that comes from coaches not being able to, trying to police every moment and not allowing leaders to lead. And to me, that's the type of coach I always resonated well, was a coach that, like Vermees, like Kinnear, like Owen Coyle, could empower their leaders to lead to where their voice could be most impactful in tactics and in big moments. Because if it's always coming from the coach, it's like I think about even parenting my kids. If I'm yelling at them all the time, that time that I really need to yell, I don't think it's going to have as much of an impact, as opposed to like they have to make mistakes, they have to learn on their own. I'm not going to be there at every single moment in their life to tell them, you can't touch that, that's hot, you're going to burn yourself. They got to burn themselves around the hot pan to know I can't do that anymore. I think we overparent these days as much as coaches try to overcoach. Right. And it's, it's so much of society. I just think in general with the access that we have now to social media.
What's the proudest moment of your career?
That's a really interesting question, because like the proudest moment for me, and probably when I think back to, like, I'm trying to categorize proud, because representing my country in a World Cup is as big as it gets. And like when I was a kid, it's what I wrote down on every piece of paper. I want to be a professional football player. I want to play in a World Cup. And I got to do that. I got to live that out. And I still remember as I was standing there as coming on as a sub against England for the US, and like standing there warming up and jumping up and down, thinking like in my head, even in that moment, I'm thinking I'm about to play in a World Cup. Like my family were there to support me, and I knew how many millions of people were watching at home. And it really does feel like a moment of accomplishment in all the work that you put in, as you did on and off the field, and every little moment. I honestly stand out there now at my daughter's youth soccer matches, and I look at the thousands of kids that are playing games every weekend, and I think so many of these kids want to be able to do what I did, and how many of them were like me in that moment, and that I was fortunate enough, but also worked hard enough and had the talent to be able to achieve that dream, but how many won't? And I think sometimes we forget that, and I forget that even as you're on this journey. And so like when I think back about that moment, like that's something that really stands out. And then like scoring in the derby for Bolton against Blackburn, like that's a goal I have watched 1,000 times at least. That's probably grossly understating it, because like that moment for me playing in the Premier League against our biggest rival, we were down a man, they equalized in the 89th minute, and I scored straight off the kickoff, and I have this moment of ecstasy, and I black out, and I'm celebrating, and like I watch that with my son now, and he is just smiling from ear to ear, and my daughter as well. And so these are moments I know I carry for a lifetime, but that was like a personal milestone and a moment that just felt so special.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I wish I could have say the same thing. But on the flip side, what was kind of your like toughest moments?
The toughest moment would have been getting injured at Old Trafford against Manchester United. I was at the absolute peak of my career and heading to the next level as a player, and I was playing against Manchester United, who I'd supported as a kid. That was my family's club. My first time playing at Old Trafford. We're 0-0 in the 81st minute. I felt like I was playing an incredible game, which was echoed by Sir Alex Ferguson after the match. He talked about saying that injury was an unfortunate moment in the game because he felt like I was the best player on the field, which my dad, who had passed away at the time, he would have been rolling over in his grave, like knowing that Sir Alex Ferguson had talked about me in that way playing at Old Trafford. But yeah, I was through in on goal and the ball kind of skipped away from a pass. I challenged for a 50-50 that I had every right to win. I was absolutely destroyed in a tackle by Johnny Evans. I fractured my knee and I ended up chipping off a bone in the back, which I didn't realize. I knew it was bad at the time, but I didn't know it was that bad because you're in this state of shock. And it wasn't until I had this surgery. So I went down to the hospital the next day because I had an open fracture in my knee. And I wake up and the surgeon was like, hey, this was worse than we thought. I had to put a pin in your knee and you're probably going to be out for about a year. And I just remember in that moment, my stomach sank and I couldn't believe it. I was in a state of shock because it was like, I felt invincible before that. You know, it was playing incredible soccer. I was playing in the Premier League. I just played in a World Cup. It felt honestly like nothing could go wrong. And then I talk to a lot of young players about this now because you have to prepare for sometimes and be working towards things that you won't ever expect, and your career could end in a flash. And essentially mine did. I got back to playing, and I represented the national team again, and I played a couple more Premier League games, but I was never myself. And then it was an ACL on the other knee and another ACL and another ACL. So I tore my ACL 4 more times on the other knee after that injury, and that just became kind of the downward spiral. So that's something I look back on that was definitely the biggest disappointment in my career, and it was difficult, but I've always chose to put a positive spin on that.
What those setbacks did you? Is there one thing that you learned from that bad experiences?
Yeah, I had to learn, and I'm typically an optimistic person.
I can tell.
Yeah, but in those moments, it was hard, and I went through, I guess, in retrospect, a lot of depression and moments of why me and really down moments. And that's when I relied on my support system and my fiance, who's now my wife of 10 years, and my brother, my family, my teammates, the fans, all of those people. I found ways to draw on the positives for, and I always viewed it as a challenge. I love challenges. I'm a competitor, and I loved every person that would say, you're never going to make it back and you can't do that. And I would look them straight in the eyes and say, I'm going to be back. I'm going to recover from this injury. And I'm going to prove you wrong. And I'm going to get back to my best. So I would allow myself about 2 weeks of feeling sorry for myself and damn, this sucks. And then I would flip into setting small goals for recovery, and being able to get the muscle back in my leg was boom, that was one. And then I'm walking again, and then I'm doing this, and then I'm on to that next phase of the recovery. And then when I would start to be back, I would take really inspiration from being, getting compliments and beating timelines. And if everybody says you're going to be out for 6 months, I'd be out for 4 months. And it ended up sometimes working against me, in that I tried to come back from an ACL after 5.5 months, which was absolutely insane. And then I tore my ACL in the first game back. And, it's just that competitive internal desire to be on the field. And you feel the reality is, I don't know if you felt this or if you ever had like a longer injury, but you feel pressure from your coaches to be back on the field.
1,000%.
And I'm not blaming them, because it's the reality of the business, but I should never have played my first reserve game back at 5.5 months on an ACL. I should have been protected from myself, because the athlete always wants to say yes, and we always want to play. And I felt good, but the reality is I wasn't good. And if somebody had really looked at my situation, they would have said, Stu, you're in a lot of danger if you play in this game, even though I'm like, no, I'm going to play.
And
I'm going to play.
ACLs, instead of 5.5 months, are 9 months.
Well,
right?
now they say 9 months to a year.
Yeah.
Which I should have done, and I probably would have played, because now my last ACL surgery was over 10 months ago. 10 years ago. And I'm not obviously playing at the same level now, but I still play, and I play tennis, and I'm pretty active, but yeah.
Yeah, no. And after these, all these injuries, then you decide, okay, now it's time. I'm done with it. I've been through a transition. You've been through a transition. How was that, going from I'm at the best of the best, doing what I do, to I don't know what I'm going to do? You kind of lose your identity, because people know you because you are a soccer player, not because you're going to be the next analyst or commentator. How was your transition, and did you know already that you wanted to be a sports analyst?
Yeah, so I think the transition is never easy for any athlete. You've lived it, right? You go through this period of trying to recreate a new identity, because the identity we've known before was as a professional soccer player. It's always been a soccer player. Even when I was a young kid, I identified as a soccer player, because that was what gave me life and energy. And I was good in high school, so then I became the soccer player of the high school. And then when you get to college, you're a soccer player in college, and then you're a professional soccer player, and then that's what people recognize you as. You get attention because of it. You're on TV every week. You're doing interviews. There's a real buzz that comes with doing that, because it's a really unique profession. So I think the benefit I had of finding my second career is that I unfortunately had the injuries, but then fortunately, because I had the injuries, I was doing my rehab here in the United States, in LA, and I knew I was out for 8 months on my second ACL. And I said to myself, I'm going to take a lot more time on this recovery if I want to have any chance of playing again. I give Bolton a lot of credit, because I was still under contract, and they allowed me to come back here and rehab. But I also had this gut feeling deep down that this was probably getting towards the end for me. And even if I got back, how long would I have left? I was getting close to 30 years old. So I started to think about a second career. I had a call from who's now a really good friend of mine. I actually talked to him on the phone on the way over here this morning. He was a producer in TV. Shaw Brown is his name. He texted me seconds after I tore my ACL in the Gold Cup final and said hey, would you be interested in TV? And I was like, not now, dude. I just tore my ACL.
I'm already on my way to the hospital,
I'm
my
on
friend.
my way for surgery. I said, but yes, I'm like interested in that. And he said, well, I think you'd be good at it. I've seen you do interviews on TV before, so call me whenever you get a chance. And so we talked in the months after. And so he kind of put wheels into motion of me getting an opportunity with NBC. And so while I was rehabbing on the weekends, I would fly up to my first ever game was in San Jose. I did like some broadcast training, and then I would fly on the weekends to do games. I would fly to ESPN at different times, and then I got some opportunities with Fox, so that when I went back to try to play one more time, I tore my ACL again. And then that was kind of the moment where I said, Stu, what are you doing, man? And I didn't want to ever remember myself as a version of myself that I wasn't like proud of, or I knew that I was as a player. Like, I didn't want to come back playing super low level league and grinding it out, having played at like the highest level. And at a stage of my life where I'm like, it didn't feel worth it to me. And it didn't feel like something that would be fun and that I would enjoy anymore. And so I really hit that hard transition to TV at that point, and instantly found that it was something that I don't think anything will ever recreate in my life what soccer was as a player. But this, I will say, has like given me that feeling of, I get that like the butterflies in the stomach before a big broadcast. I'm still close enough to a game that has given me so much. And then I still get to travel to some of these biggest events, biggest games. And I do truly, like, when I'm doing my work in my preparation and then on camera, like, it's something I love. So I feel fortunate that I kind of stumbled into something so quickly that allowed me to transition maybe a little bit easier than I know some of my teammates have gone through.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so now we are talking about like being a good analyst. What do you think should analysts should work on or should have to be like top besides great suits?
Yeah, the suits have become my thing. I love wearing suits, and it's just like it's kind of like, I don't know if you felt this way as a player, but I always used to feel like if you look good, you feel good, you're gonna play good. Like, it's all part of. It's like my uniform now.
Yeah.
You know, I'd want to have the socks the right way and the right boots and the
Right.
Yeah, you want to look in the mirror and feel like I got this. Like, I'm gonna be good on TV today. I think the moment that I realized that I could be good on TV was when I realized that if I prepared well and I treated this like a job, which it is now, much like it was with soccer, and the way that we practiced and the way that we prepared in training, it all helped you be a better player on the field. And so I think sometimes people get into TV and they don't want to put in the work that is required to help you be good for that 90 minutes that you're going to be on a broadcast or in the studio. And we think that we can kind of wing it. And so I really learned
What would be that work?
Yeah, so I have to watch a lot of soccer. And, you know, when my wife's upstairs watching the Real Housewives of whatever city, and you pick it, she's watched it, or Love Island, I'm downstairs watching MLS on a Saturday, I'm watching Premier League on a Sunday. But then, for example, I'm calling 2 games on Sunday for World Cup qualifiers for Europe. So I'm doing Netherlands. So I'm going to watch probably their last 3 games. I'll watch all their set pieces. I'll go in, then drill down on different players that I think are impact players, like Memphis or Xavi Simons or whoever it might be, Virgil van Dijk. Look at some of their, you know, if it's Van Dijk, like, how does he attack on a set piece? Where have been some of the big moments he's been key for them in qualifying for so far. So I try to go in with a picture of what I think the game is going to look like. I have all my notes that I do on, you know, the goals and caps that they've had, or is anybody coming up on a big milestone. I'll prepare with my partner, John Strong, on what we're thinking as far as storylines. What's the big stuff he wants to hit? What are the things I want to get to early into a game? Because this is also a partnership as well. It's not just about me. And so there's so much that goes into a broadcast to then when you get actually into the game, you actually only end up using maybe the top 2 to 5% of all the information that you've ingested and prepared with. But then when you're on camera, you only get one chance. It's not like you can stop down and be like, I want to re-say that. Everything you're saying is live. You're in the moment. And then I also think it's like, I don't know if you as a player, I used to watch my games back and look at areas that I could have made a pass or made a run.
For sure.
And so I do that as a broadcaster.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I hated it at the beginning, honestly, like hearing my own voice and like the way I would say stuff, or if I messed something up, or if I stumbled on camera. I hated it, but it was like a process I had to go through to be comfortable with it.
There's other
I did it with a
that can
producer a
help.
lot at the beginning, but now I kind of joke with my producers of, I know when I've made a mistake, or I know I could do something better, but we still walk back through games together. And even John and I say sometimes younger producers, because we've been doing this for 10 years and we've called some of the biggest games in American and global soccer, they're almost afraid sometimes to give us feedback or say something when we mess up. But actually, we're probably the most coachable. And actually, they say that a lot about athletes. Like athletes, we're coachable. We used to being coached our whole lives. So I'd rather you say, if you don't think I'm doing something well, tell me why, or tell me what I should do. And I do think that's a really good trait for an athlete in general in life, whether you go into business or whatever, is that we're very much team players, and we want to be coached, and we want to be the best. And like that combination is really what helps you excel.
And I feel like people who haven't been in that position, they may take offense if go and tell them, hey, you gotta do this better or that. But man, we've been in a lot of locker rooms, a lot of different personalities that they talk shit about. Hey, this pass, or you should be here in front of everybody, whatever it is. And at the end, you end up taking it for the better and for getting better. So I feel we should still keep pushing for that and getting everybody on board, and that can help us be better. Do you think because you used to be a soccer player, players respect you more the way you do broadcasting, the way you commentate the games? And also, do you give them a pass when they miss or they fail a pass, or because at the end of the day, you've been in that position and you know how hard it is, versus somebody that is commentating that nobody that hasn't been on the field before as a soccer player?
Yeah, I think when you're a former athlete and you've been in the shoes of the players that have played these games, I think it automatically gives you some level of credibility with what you're saying. And that's why ultimately I'm in the position that I'm in. I think my golden rule that I learned pretty early in TV was, no matter what I'm going to say on the microphone, on camera, at any given moment, I want to be comfortable saying to somebody's face. And if I can't do that, then I'm a coward, first of all. And then I also don't believe what I'm saying if I'm saying stuff that then I wouldn't be able to say to you. And so I've always tried to approach it in that way. Now, I know that there's been players in the past that haven't liked what I've said. I didn't like what people said about me in those times, but I actually had a former teammate of mine that I lost contact with because he didn't like something that I'd said. And then we had a little bit of a back and forth online at one point. He never reached out to me personally on the side at that time. And then we just didn't talk. And I was noticeably he would kind of avoid me in certain social situations where we'd be maybe in the same social scenes or at games. And I was disappointed by that, but I respected his decision. And he was a friend as a teammate, and we played many, many years together. But again, I respected that he, at that moment, didn't understand where I was coming from, or ultimately this is my job now. But then years later, I give him so much credit. He reached out to me via a mutual friend, got my number again because my number had changed at that point, and called me and said, hey, I just want to apologize to you because I didn't like what you said. Here's why I didn't like what you said. But many years later now, I'm older, I'm more mature. I've had perspective that actually what you were saying was fair from your side. I didn't like it because I just was in this zone as a player, and I didn't like what any media would say ever about me. And I want to seek to repair our relationship, and I see you still as a friend. And I just said dude, first of all, you don't need to apologize. I no hard feelings from my side. I never if you were ever ready to rebuild and repair that relationship, I was here. I really love that you understand, like, this is my job, this is my career. I'm not doing anything personally. Like, I'm paid now to commentate. I try to be fair and like, let's grab a coffee and like let's hang out and like catch up again. And that has been really kind of refreshing to hear.
That's what's the name?
I
mean, now
it's Josie Altidore.
Amazing.
So Josie reached out to me and like handled it really maturely, and I don't think he would be mad at all that I told that story, because I feel like that is really reflective of just like how great of a guy he was. And like we talk a ton now and connect, and we see each other at different events. And I've always seen him as I loved him as a player. And, you know, he unfortunately towards the end of his career had some injuries kind of like I did, and was battling through these moments. But he was, man, at his best, Josie was just almost so hard to defend. But I guess, like, just to answer your question fully, I don't ever really know how other players feel about me as a broadcaster, other than I can only judge on how I am received or treated when I'm around. And I like to think sometimes that that's good, but I also know that like players still understand that I'm in media and they have to kind of talk to me in certain settings. So I always try to be fair, and I try to put it through the lens of like, I've been in that situation. I always try to put a positive spin on things. I have to be critical in moments. That's my job. And if I'm not, the audience is like, this guy's BSing and he's protecting people. So I try to be fair, but I also try to tell the story of what he was trying to do. Nobody's purposely trying to make mistakes on the field, but I could say he's trying to pick out the guy at the back post. He rushed the delivery, and so the ball flew to the goalie, and the goalie's got it, and that's a missed opportunity. And I think that's a fair way of trying to do it.
I like the approach. Yeah. And we were talking about like how can, you know, opinions damage or affect the performance of a player. Now with the era of social media that you probably didn't experience much, right? And I did it, but at the end as well of my career, how much like social media can affect, or do you think that can affect to this young rising star, and all of a sudden, you know, you do a bad game or play a bad national team game, and all of a sudden like the whole country is against you, hate, and I mean, as just a person, this is a hard environment.
Yeah. Anybody that tells you that they don't read or see anything is full of crap. And I think we hear this so much, where it's like players will say, or coaches will say to us in meetings, well, you know, what I don't know what you're talking about. I don't listen or read any of that. And I haven't heard that. And you're like, no, everybody hears and sees it. And even if they're not directly on social media, somebody's telling them, hey, did you see what such and such said about you? And I think that's why, even just most recent example, you've seen this blowback from the current national team players against the old guard of, maybe I'm included in that. I'm in media. I'm a former national team player. I've been critical in moments of this group of players. Well, the comments from Tim Weah, which have made constant rounds, at least in our circles as well, of calling the older generation evil. It just seems absolutely asinine and ridiculous to think that any of us are evil in the way that we don't want these guys to succeed. Now, we're gonna say comments or have things said that they won't agree with, but if we pull back any clip over the past 3-4 years in the lead up to 22, we were celebrating these guys nonstop about how amazing they were, and we want this national team and these players to succeed. So I think that's a little naive, but I do think it's a product of today's environment where everybody's got a microphone, everybody's got a platform if they wanted to say stuff. More than ever, guys have opportunities to be talking about, reviewing, and I think that's a good thing. If we go back to our day, like, people didn't care as much. Now people care, because you know what? You guys are playing at big clubs. You're being paid more money. You're about to be next year the biggest stage that any American soccer player has ever been on in the history of our game in this country. And with that comes a responsibility, because the United States is where it is with soccer, to perform, to grow the game. There's so much. And I empathize with these guys and the pressures that come with that. And when you don't have a good game, you're hearing it from every single angle. And I didn't experience that in the same way, but I did from a sense of playing in England where the pressure is so high in the Premier League, and anywhere you go to eat after a game, go to the store, walk your dog, you're hearing it from fans, you're hearing it from your teammates, you're hearing it from the media. It's on the TV every single day on Sky Sports, on Match of the Day. And so I remember the first time that I was watching Match of the Day, one of my favorite shows, and they did a literal breakdown of a mistake that I had made against Birmingham City, and my stomach sank down, and I've never felt that like moment of, oh my gosh, like that pressure and that like, that feeling was awful. So I understand that as a player, but it doesn't mean that, again, I'm in the media and I talk about the game for a living, and I'm not sitting there saying, man, Uri had a terrible game, I can't wait to smash this guy today. It's like, here's why I think that happened, and this guy's not a bad player overnight. So it's tough. I empathize with these players, but at the same time, I'm like, hey guys, like, it's part of the job. You're a professional soccer player.
It is. And now that you're talking about like the World Cup, like this is a once of a lifetime opportunity to, to show how US is prepared for this world stage, and how do you think the World Cup is going to affect the future of US soccer?
And by the way, I would trade everything I have right now to play on that field next year for 2026. Like that moment itself, I'm insanely jealous of the opportunity that these young men will have to represent the U.S. on what is going to be the biggest media event in the history, not just of U.S., but of the world. And so I think we've been talking about for 8 years what will be the legacy impact of the World Cup. And I don't think it's going to be this, giant like rocket ship next moment for soccer and global frontier of American soccer. But I do think there's going to be a huge amount of attention. You're going to convert new fans into soccer fans. And the question, as ever, is how can we capitalize on that as a soccer nation in the United States and in North America? And when I was in England, I was reminded of this just recently at a game. It was Liverpool-Bournemouth opening match of the Premier League, and I took my kids to the game. And I was just once again reminded of, like, this is religion for people in Europe. And it has had hundreds of years of history. We're still building towards that. I mean, the reality is we do have a great soccer history in the U.S., but more recent, it's about a 30 to 40-year history of where soccer has to where it is to where now, you see and you're able to go to games in your backyard. But we have to continue to convert our kids and their kids into soccer fans and give more opportunities for kids to play. So my hope is that the legacy impact of this is more youth soccer programs, inner city, diverse communities that all have pathways as soccer players to be able to live out their dreams if they want to be soccer players. And so I hope that the money that comes as part of that it's invested and reinvested into these local communities, and that these kids get opportunities to play, because that's how you're going to truly change soccer to where it can become like religious in the way that American football and basketball and baseball are in this country.
I agree. And now talking about, like you said a little bit about the youth, is there any particular names or name that you are very excited about? This kid is gonna be the next Stu Holden without injuries.
So even watching Mexico right now, they have this 16-year-old kid, Gilberto Mora, who's just insane player, and he's thrown into the deep end with the national team at 16 years old, and was one of the best players in the Gold Cup. He's the best player in the U20 World Cup right now, and he's going to be a superstar. And I think the question I constantly have, and a lot of us in American soccer, is why don't we have players like this that are in the pipeline? And one of the names that's constantly thrown out is Kevin Sullivan, who plays for the Philadelphia Union. He's 16. He's signed by Man City. He's going to go there when he's 18. But I don't know how good he is yet, because like he's still playing with Philly's second team. He's had a couple of first team appearances. I don't think he's a guy you could drop in the national team right now and he's going to blow it up and just be this global phenom. But maybe he's got a little bit of something there. I try to think of guys that are with the national team that wouldn't be the obvious names, like Pulisic, McKennie, Weah. Like, these guys are are super exciting players and young talents for this national team. So yeah, I think if I have to throw out like the next generation young player, it probably would be Sullivan from Philly, but also like I want to see him thrown in at the deep end a little bit and see how he reacts and see the opportunity. I don't think we do that enough with some of these young players. Whereas, we think of a young player in America as like 19, 20, 21 years old.
Right.
In Spain, that's young
late.
players are, yeah.
Look
If
at
you
Lamine.
haven't made it by that point, you're done.
You're done. Look at Lamine Yamal.
17. It's incredible.
16, 17
18,
already.
sorry. Yeah, just turned 18, right? These young players, Gavi, Pedri, they're all playing. Well, we just signed a couple of young players in Mallorca from Barcelona, from La Masia, 19, 20. And it's not like, hey, we're going to give these guys time. It's, hey, we're expecting performances now. And that's the reality. And I love that pressure on young players.
Yeah. Switching to, so at For the Football, as we are here, we want to do something for the World Cup. We want to cover, we want to be closer to the people. What do you think we should focus like to connect with the fans now that you've been on the TVs and you've seen it firsthand? What kind of format you would like to see as a fan that you wanna follow the World Cup?
I think one of the best parts of World Cups off the field are the fans, honestly, as you said. So you're talking about for the fans. I love seeing the fan stories told, and I think it's going to be a huge part of this World Cup is that you're going to have nations at the World Cup for the very first time. And I think it's a really big part of making the World Cup atmosphere special on the field, off the field, the way that these fans travel around and go from game to game and get and experience the United States. And so I'm very fascinated by that part of it. Obviously on the field, the stories are going to be told by us on broadcast and by many, many broadcasters around the world. And so I think trying to find unique stories of maybe some of these countries and their families and how they're going to plan to watch the games and what it means for them. And even for these players that'll be stepping on the field and playing against the likes of Messi and Ronaldo, Lamine Yamal, whoever, right? These are the moments and the stories that I think become very relatable for American viewers, for global viewers, and finding those unique stories about how even the funding for some of these families, I mean, the reality is that they will be saving up and paying out with every last dime that they have to travel to watch their kids live out their dreams on the biggest stage in a World Cup. And I think sometimes that gets forgotten, and we dehumanize some of these players, and we just expect athletes at all moments to be so great on the field without understanding what happened for them to get to that point.
Okay, noted, my friend. I'm taking notes here. And lastly, I found it really interesting when I heard that you are part of the ownership of Mallorca. How did it happen? Why Mallorca?
Es porque yo hablo español ahora. El podcast está en español, ¿no? Ahora. Yeah, so I honestly just kind of stumbled into this deal, if I'm being completely honest. And Steve Nash is one of my best friends in life, and he is obviously renowned as a two-time NBA MVP, one of the best point guards to have ever played the game, but also just happens to be a huge soccer fan. And so we, played pickup soccer here in LA consistently.
We actually play one.
Yeah,
remember?
yeah. He's a great player too. So he got called by the couple of guys in the ownership group from the Suns who said to him, hey, we're interested in exploring the idea of buying a European soccer team. We think you would be perfect to join the group. Are you interested? And Steve said, not only am I interested, I'd love to bring a friend of mine into the deal who is a soccer player, has played in Europe, is from Europe, has played at the highest level, and kind of understands the business of soccer in that part of the world. And so I had a dinner with the whole group. I ended up hitting it off with those guys super well and got involved in the ownership group of what ultimately ended up being, at that time, we didn't know it was going to be Mallorca. And we were looking at teams all across Scotland, England, Spain, and then landed on Mallorca, which is not a bad place to own a team.
Wow.
And honestly has been one of the most fun and inspiring projects I've been a part of because, as you know, Spanish soccer is so rich in history and in culture. And when you experience a game in Spain, and we've had some success since we've been a part of that team. We took it over in the second division, went basically straight down to the third, second, first now. And it's when you go and experience a game over there and you see and you speak to the fans that have suffered, have celebrated. I mean, Mallorca won a Copa del Rey back in the day, but it's a club of over 100 years of history and had been through a really bad period. To now see the success that we are having, it brings me so much joy. I wake up every morning on a Saturday or a Sunday and I flip that TV on and I'm invested in the game. I'm talking to our sporting director, to our CEO, communicating with our ownership group on a consistent basis. And I just wanted to learn, honestly. I didn't want to go in there with an attitude of, hey, this is how we do soccer. It was more, hey, we know you know what you're doing here. How can we add? How can we give you better resources? Speaking to the fans, understanding what was important to them, which was also not coming in and being like, hey, we're just going to make a quick buck here. We're going to sell the club in 5 years once you get to La Liga and we're gone. We pretty early on said we're committed to this for the long term. And that's been since 2016 now. It's almost going to be 10 years next year.
Do you see yourself getting more and more involved as time goes?
Yeah, I mean, like in terms of my personal involvement, yes, because I once again, I've understood also Spaniards, you have to build trust with them to, I think, earn the respect for them to respect your opinion, and them also to see that you're invested in this in the same way that they are, and how you communicate and how you can be additive and not. Again, I get there a couple times a year to Mallorca, and I love bringing my family. I love going with Steve. We watch a lot of games, but I'm not there every single day, so I don't know. You have to empower the people in the best positions to do their jobs, and you have to trust that they know what they're doing, and they do. We have some great people at the club that, really work hard and have done a great job, and so I love when I go there. I get to eat some great dinners and get to see the city and talk to fans and go to games and meet our players and feel from their side how they're feeling. Even just the last time we were back, we learned a lot about how the locker room was heading into this upcoming season, which is going to be a difficult one because we're going through a lot of transitions on and off the field, and we haven't had the greatest start to the season, but I believe in the group and the processes that we have in place that we're going to be fine.
Okay. Don't look at me. I'm already retired, but definitely I would like to come one day with you and
please, man, you have an open invite.
That
not when we're playing Barcelona opening game of the season and we lose to your former team. But I don't know if you've been there for a game ever. And
I haven't.
Yeah, it's
a good friend of mine used to play there.
Yeah, it's a really, we've redone the entire stadium. It's a beautiful venue. It's obviously a beautiful island, and I'm excited. I'm gonna go back in the spring, so maybe you'll be in Spain.
Okay,
we can go. I got so jealous the other day of your photo you posted with the paella.
I know. I actually cook pretty good paella.
Okay, let's do it, bro.
We should do it. But yeah, finally, last question. What would be the piece of advice that you would give to young players, even fans that are chasing their dreams in soccer?
It's a good one. I'm hesitating because I hate just giving out like cliches of, work hard and do this. And, I think when I talk to a lot of young athletes, I talk about, you have to learn to love to be obsessed with the work that goes along with the rewards of playing on the weekend. And I think even I think about this a lot as I parent my young kids who are very in love with soccer. They're good at soccer at a young age. But again, that guarantees you nothing going forward. I wasn't the most talented young player in Houston. I was one of the better players, but I wasn't the most talented. But I ended up going the furthest of people at my age that I played with growing up. And I think I just had this relentless obsession with wanting to be the best and doing the things off the field that helped me be the best, but then also being a relentless competitor on the field and being obsessed with the competition, being obsessed with being the best, and every single opportunity that I had to be coachable, to get better on the field, to play games, to test myself against better opposition. I never wanted to be the best one on my team. I always wanted to be on a better team. And if I heard that kid was better than me, I wanted to play against that kid the next day. And not when I lost, not getting down on the losses, but using those as learning opportunities. And so I talk to young kids a lot about that, of finding ways to, love going out there and kicking the ball against the wall 100 times, or love. I challenged my daughter. I said, can you get 100 juggles a week? And she's like, that's a lot. And I'm like, break that down per day. It's not a lot of juggles. It's like 15 juggles a day for you. Is that a lot? How long does that take you? 1 minute. But it also just is you changing your mindset to being like, I want to do that. That's 2 minutes. But guess what? She goes out there for 2 minutes. She ends up going out there for 20 because she ends up loving doing that, and she sees the improvement. And so I think when you see those little improvements in yourself and you understand that if you actually do those things, you can get better. That's how you're going to change your mindset to be, I think, not just great in sport, but great in life. And those are the lessons that I think, even if you make it pro or you don't make it pro, you're going to be good in life. And that's why a lot of athletes have success.
Love it. Stu Holden, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks, bro. It's fun, man.
Appreciate it.
Let's go play padel.
Anytime.